Hello, everyone. Welcome to my first interview. My name is James Shin. This is the Shin Show. Uh,
The Shin Show. Today's guest, director Jail Park.
this is where I get to, talk to some interesting people and with some interesting story. And for the first interview, I am very happy and I'm very honored to interview my good friend and my favorite director, who currently just finished the project with Disney Plus and Hulu, the NCT 127, The Lost Boys.
What does that mean?
Neocourse technology.
K1?
We decided to do this interview through the many fan bases. They gathered all the fan questions, and I'm here to ask the questions to Jay. I saw you yesterday, but nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Just wanted to start the show just with what you've been up to these days.
Uh, I guess I moved to the city of Koyang, and I've just been working on my next project. I guess I've been working on feature film treatment. Yeah.
How's that going?
It's writing's always tough, so like why are you smiling?
It's funny because I already know what you've been up.
Yeah, it's like you don't even care
Yeah,
because you already know everything.
But at the moment, like with what you're writing, you're keeping a secret from me as well, just
Yeah.
because I need to.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm developing a feature film treatment and hopefully we can have one of the members from NCT 127. Oh yeah.
So Jay, are you feeling the love from the fans?
Yeah, I think what was interesting was like one of the fans slash reporter told me that it's rare to have like the majority of the fans agree on something, and I think for 2 weeks I had like hundreds of DMs and like messages and emails, like people talking about how much they loved the project and the documentary, and so I was very grateful for that. And yeah, sometimes like there would be like they would send me a letter, like they would write a handwritten letter and like capture it and send it. I think a lot of fans enjoy the fact that they in the seventh year of NCT 127 they got to see a side of the members that they hadn't seen before. So but at the same time, there were some people, like a very small minority, I would say, a very small minority of people, I think, had a problem with the documentary. I think it's because maybe because there was elements of their private lives, a very small minority of people. I did get some death threats. I mean, it's K-pop. You know what I mean? K-pop. So yeah, some people wanted to kill me. There's this fake majority that kept on trying to make it like a boycott Disney Plus because we had revealed the private lives of the members, and I thought that was kind of weird considering, I mean, the documentary is about the lives of the members. It's usually, I think they wanted to something more like a concert behind the scenes,
Yeah.
sort of thing. But with that said, like I mean, I don't want to like badmouth the Korean fans. The majority of Korean fans enjoyed it as well. It's just that
Yes.
so we got to be very careful with this, but
I totally understand. I mean, I think there's that small amount group that really, gives you a bit of the sour taste. But I think you're gonna get hate no matter what you do.
yeah.
Yeah, in some sort of way. So I think it's very small group. So that's why I remember you telling me this last time.
Yeah.
And I was saying let's not worry too much
Well,
about
I was
that.
flattered by the death threats because it means that they really care.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah, but with that said, like I definitely want to take this opportunity to say, clarify some stuff. Actually, we came up with the idea together, like in the off the record interviews. The only thing that I came up with in the beginning was we wanted the members to be able to share their stories. So the only thing was we're gonna tell the stories that they want to share. So in the off the record interviews, like when we met the members, like some people like Tay, Tay came in there and he had like 3-4 stories like pre-prepared, and we were listening to it and we decided together on what stories they wanted to share about their lives. So it was a very organic process. It wasn't like, oh, me and SM were conspiring together. It's like, all right, you're gonna share your some dark past that you have. It was nothing like that. It was an organic process, and coincidentally, the best stories, like the stories that they wanted to share, had to do with their childhood. And it makes a lot of sense because if you think about it, you know, they joined the trainee program in middle school or high school. So the fondest memories they usually have of their past would be their childhood, you know, because after they become a trainee, they're very busy. All 9 members, they sort of forgot about their past, you know, like I think Cheon said it best in an interview in the documentary, said, you know, you're like this racehorse, you know, and you're just focusing on the present that you forget where you are, you know. And I think the concept came about for the Lost Boys. The head writer, Nyan Lee, and we were like, this is very similar to the story of the Lost Boys. The fact that once they go to Neverland, they're always living in the present. They don't remember where they came from. They're always in the present. Like, even they forget what happened the day before. Like, I mean, this is very, very dark, but in the book, Peter Pan, which is a children's novel, right? There's even a scene in which Peter Pan kills somebody, right?
Yeah.
And forgets it 10 minutes later. So memory had, I think, was a very important theme in the series. So after we decided on the stories, and I thought, you know, the Lost Boys and how they don't remember their past, I think that was a good idea for the cohesive thread. There's these lost memories, and through the documentary, they're sort of rediscovering their past. And I thought that's a beautiful concept to have, you know. And, you know, the majority of the members, they did even thank me. Because, I mean, that's what happens in the documentary. It's not that I'm special. It's that usually when you shoot a documentary, you have a chance to look back on the past. And what happens is, like, after 7 years, they had the opportunity to look back on their past and where they came from.
Yeah, almost therapeutic, right?
Yeah, it was very therapeutic. I mean, like I mentioned in other interviews, like the majority of the members cried like during the interviews, you know.
Yeah.
So and it's not like just sadness, it's also joy, you know, like thinking about like how they grew up, where they came from, and the fact that, you know, they're glad where they are today, you know.
The Shin Show.
Since we were talking about like things that we just want to make sure that how the process we did, I mean, about the rules and regulations we had for this project, I want to skip to that straight away, since we talked about it.
Because you were a producer too.
Yeah,
you were very strict on that.
Yeah, because we honestly, like, I wanted to talk about, like, maybe you can mention it first about, you know, what kind of principles were the rules that we had to make sure that we wanted to only talk about the things that they wanted to talk about.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that was so crucial to us, because the concept wasn't, this is not like investigative journalism. It's not a crime documentary where we're trying to get to the truth of like an event. This was more about, the concept was the members being the storytellers themselves. It would be beautiful just documenting that alone, you know. So yeah, the rule was, like, the head writer, Nyan Lee, did a great job. I mean, she's a pretty famous feminist among the filmmaker community. And one thing that was very important for the documentary, and she instilled in all the crew, was we have to be ethical. That we can't include anything that they don't want to share. You know, even if, like, it was SM or Mystic says, oh, this is good, so let's put it in. If one of the members said they don't want to include that, or they don't want to share that, out of there right away. So we had the opposite problem.
Yeah.
The opposite problem. The members wanted to share a lot more. You know what I'm saying? So,
I wish we can say it. It's my mouth is itching right now, to be honest.
Yeah.
But my God, yeah, like, especially some members, especially.
yeah. The problem wasn't that we shared too much, guys. The problem is they wanted to share more.
Yeah.
You know? And but definitely also when we were doing the off the record interviews, we did record it because we wanted to put it in script form later. But everyone, including me, we all signed NDA contracts, meaning that if anyone leaks any of this information, you know, there'll be legal repercussions, also ethical. I mean, so it was the writing team and me. Like, we didn't even allow the producers to listen to the off the record interviews that we did. So that's how careful we were, guys. All right.
let's talk about our writing room. Let's talk about that. How
Oh my
we were
God.
so because of some incidents and stories that we heard. This is the beginning of this process. Like
So
in the
are we going to get into
pre-production.
Haseng fans now?
Oh, I think we have to talk about it because that really.
Actually, why don't you start with what you experienced? Because like we actually kind of underestimated the, the culture. Because it was like, I mean, how bad could it be? We had off the record interviews with fans, and they were always warning us, be careful with this Haseng fans. But we were like, how bad could it be? And then you had your first experience when you were shooting in America, right?
Yeah, in LA.
Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, so I mean, when we were preparing the interviews in LA, and we had a separate place away from the hotel that they were staying, and we had to drive each member from the hotel to the location where we were interviewing them. And after like the second member, I think a car started to follow the car that was driving them back and forth, and one of the local producer told me about it. So we had to switch cars in the middle of it to kind of confuse the Sazeng fans of where we are.
I remember hearing from the producers that you guys switch cars like 2-3 times a day.
Yeah, we just had to just like take different routes. Just we didn't know what was going on. We were so scared because like you told them we were talking about in a writing room in Korea. We had like locks. We had to put the curtains down for like a whole year. We didn't even put the curtains up because we were so scared that we have things leaking.
I remember you coming back and I was like, oh, how was it? We're talking about, oh, Sazeng fans? Like, I mean, come on. And you're like, no, Jay. No, Jay. Like, you have no idea. And I was like, oh my God, it's like this guy actually went to war and then came back and is like, no, you don't know what war is. You don't know what we had to endure. You don't know the casualties.
Like even at the airport, they're taking they're getting on the same plane as the members just to follow them around, even at the time of the most private times. And I feel just so much pain for the members. That's why it was so hard to see.
Oh, by the way, my interviewer here, he handled all the concert footage. He shot all the stuff internationally, including Indonesia and all the American concerts and Singapore.
Bangkok.
Sorry, oops, cut that out. Okay, Bangkok. Yeah, but anyway, because Singapore shoot is 2 weeks ago, right? Edit all that stuff out earlier. I want to add here like after he came back, everyone started getting paranoid. So like in the writers' room, what happened was we started seeing outside this group of 3 women, and one writer noticed they were there at a certain time 3 days in a row, and we started getting paranoid. Do they live here, or is this coincidental? Are we seeing like similar looking people? And then inevitably we had to get an additional lock, and there was only one key because we were worried. Because I mean, the writers were, we had a picture of every member and these details on the wall, these personal details, and to imagine like one fan going in there and just taking one picture and it's over.
Yeah. And I remember at the end of the product, like about 2 months ago, like when I got all those these writings and notes, I didn't shred them, I burnt them. Like I just wanted to make sure no one will ever see any details about it. I had to burn them all. Like I went to a mountain. Like I'm not kidding. I burnt it all there. So
The Shin Show.
So let's go back, and when you first were contacted by Mystic Story about this project,
Yeah.
okay, what was your first thought about it?
No. Because to be
What
honest,
did they tell you first?
well, they said they were doing a K-pop documentary, and initially I didn't want to do it because I wasn't, because I'm an older generation, like I'm 10 years older than Tae, so so like my musical taste is a lot older. When Mystic contacted me, and then I met with director Im, he's like the executive producer of this project. I told him like, don't you want someone that knows more about K-pop, and for him, it was more interesting if it was like from an outsider perspective. But little did he know, by the end of it, we were all NCT 127 stands.
we became big fans of
yeah,
those.
like we, by the end, I think it was mandatory that everyone working on a production actually cared about, like we had to listen to all the albums and do individual research, and it's like nicknames, birthdays, personal details,
Yeah.
their favorite color, their favorite hobby, what they ate for dinner like 1 week ago, like crazy details that we got into. Yeah.
Mm.
All right. What's Chungwoo's birthday?
I don't know. When is it?
It's February 1998. Right.
How do you know that?
You know, like a lot of it gets edited out. Like one of the things that got edited out that I'm so like the best scene in the documentary is actually with Chungwoo. But I mean, you know, like I'm not complaining. Like I mean, no one like I just want to say like people don't get the final cut in the industry. Like most, if you're not like Bong Joon-ho or like you know Steven Spielberg, you don't really get final cut. But you know, like a lot of it got cut out, and that all the clown stuff in the circus stuff, we shot that one day before Chungwoo's birthday. So we surprised him by having his mom and his sister come to set. So right afterwards, you know, there was a cake and everything, and it was a very memorable experience for me too, for Chungwoo as well. But yeah,
There was so many beautiful scenes that was cut out. That was very unfortunate for Jungwoo's scene.
yeah,
But I think, you know, there is it's not just of this project. It happens in many
yeah,
projects.
it happens in every project.
Yeah, so it's not like just because
don't
of...
like you know make it a thing. But,
Yeah.
but it was my favorite scene in this series for sure.
Yeah.
Actually, I can't say that because there's like Toyoung. There was so
There's
good.
so
Such
many,
good
I mean, there's
scenes.
so many good stories there. I mean, if there was a director's cut, I definitely know what you would definitely put in there.
The whole series would be an hour longer.
Yeah, exactly.
I think like the one criticism that I really agree with, what a lot of fans said, that it was too short. I agree.
Okay, so this is the fans question. Okay, this is your first documentary series, and the subject is a K-pop group. What convinced you to take this project?
Oh, because you know I was scared doing a K-pop documentary, but thing is like, I mean, just because it's not your taste, you can't let like individual taste get in the way of creativity. If I thought that if I can make this K-pop documentary unique, through my research, I learned that NCT 127 was special because they did the K-pop idol thing completely different from other bands, and they had the whole concept of being Neo, and I was like, what if we made a Neo documentary?
Yeah.
So that opportunity did excite me, and the moment I, you know, asked the members individually, what if we did a Neo completely different style documentary? Everyone was on board. It was like, oh yeah, let's do it different, you know. So that excited me. Inevitably, I was excited to do it, and like in the industry, everyone knows like documentary is the most difficult genre because you don't know how it's going to come out, because you can have a set expectation, but at the end it could be a different documentary based on what you shoot, you know. So it's you plan stuff, and it's an organic process. You have to find the story as you go along. So yeah, just it doesn't even have to do with the fact that I worked in fiction. Just doing a documentary alone, and let alone like a series, and you only have like a year and a half to do it. Yes, it was very difficult, but I think you could add.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we had to do this project, like, you know, take away the post-production, like a year to do a documentary, which usually takes to 5, 6, you know, even 10 years to do one documentary. It was a very, very difficult task, I think, for us.
Yeah, especially like because I think one element that we have to address from the fan question is like fans have an expectation, and that's another thing that was a lot of pressure to us. Like the thing is, like if we did it like a you know the conventional concert documentary behind the scenes, it would have been easier for us, because then other fans would be like, oh yeah, I mean I've seen it done for other K-pop groups, so of course it's going to turn out this way. But trying it a new way like we did, you can fall in the trap of angering fans. Like, why did you do it this way? Why is it that way? But you know, fortunately, you know, they were happy, because I wanted to express the stories in a unique way. So we talked about animation, about like meta theater or epic theater, you know, or you know, performance art, and having these performances. I remember some people they were like, Animation? But I mean, all 9 members thought it would be amazing to have animation and all this stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What did you first thought about, like just K-pop idols in general?
I think when you don't know much about a subject matter, you tend to have these biases and they're not that great, So my biases, like I thought like, just like any, not just K-pop idols, but like stars. I thought they could be prima donnas or divas, or maybe they don't have a good character, or maybe they're not down to earth. But fortunately, and I say this sincerely, is all 9 members were actually really good people. So I was so glad, because I'm usually an honest person, and I didn't want to like badmouth the people that I worked with for a year and a half. But everyone had something like amazing to share about their past, but also just their personalities were all great.
The Shin Show.